There we go.
Mhm.
In answer to how it's going, I got to spend some time with some really wonderfully gifted people that I'm getting to know a little bit more. And they were the ones who had, presented me with the idea of this TV series.
Mhm.
When I found out what their backgrounds were, aside from, they're just wonderful, loving, and metaphysically aware people, all of them, they're on a
Mhm.
level, they're tribe. It was just easy to slip into conversations, and they had as many questions as you all have had for a while. Oh my God. Over the last week, we've had lots of dialogues. We're not done. Um, there'll be a day next week. There's four of them. One of them, when all this came together, had already made plans to spend a month in the Canary Islands. And so she continued with those plans. Now, there was half of her that regretted that because while we're all here getting acquainted, she's there. So we've been sending her messages through WhatsApp so that she's in the loop and she didn't feel like she was missing out. And really, the discussions that we need to have on that level really need to wait until everyone's here. And then once those discussions will take back, and that'll be Thursday and Friday this week. And then I head back to LA on Saturday, and I'm going to go spend several days with Dave Wallace and get caught up over there and see what he's been up to. And then I can share what's been going on here. But aside from all of that, it had been a while, and I really didn't notice because over the last few months, when I feel like I've almost been it's not that I ceded into the background, but it just felt I was supposed to be quiet for a while, and I was meditating every day successfully, but there was some energy going on where I was that there was distortion in my field. And so I don't want it to sound as though I was in a negative environment. The vibration was different. That would be fair to say. What I wouldn't find out until I got to Berlin and took a few days for jet lag to cease and for me to just kind of get into my own realm when I was here. And it's surprising, as busy a city and as busy as the area where I am in Berlin, you think there'd be lots of noise. I've stayed in one hotel for a week because I wasn't sure what was going to happen logistically. And then I'd stay longer. I would just figure out what might be geographically more suitable as we were going along. But both rooms I've been in have been like peaceful quiet. And it's not creepy. It's just really unusual. All of that, I said, to lead up to this, it made exactly the proper setting for me to communicate with the Lemurians. Oh, they came in. And so they were reinforcing what I was doing there, their support behind it. And they were revealing other things like this season. And they only indicated Shasta because they knew that's where I was headed. But I suspect as I'm unfolding all of these other areas in inner earth that are being brought to my attention, that there is going to be increased contact on the surface by Lemurians this year. Not just me. There's going to be a lot of other of you that are going to be tapped on the shoulder, and there won't be any questions left as to whether they're really here or not. That's how accelerated the timeline is getting. So all of you that listen to this, take note, get your vibration right, find an energetic area. And like I said, I don't necessarily think it's Shasta. My attention has been drawn to other places. I'm reading another book that had more information about inner earth, written by a Romanian, and it was published in 2017. So it's recent. What is the name of it? So I don't get lost. Hang on just a second. It's got wonderful information in it, but it focuses on some explorations that were done by Romanian and US scientists that originally were in a program called, was it Project Zero, where back when the CIA began experiments on parapsychology and that type of phenomenon. This particular individual is part of that program. There is a pyramid in Romania where one of those, it sounds very similar to me to the conditions under Mount Shasta where you find the city of Telos, where under this area in Romania where there's an energetic temple as well, there's lots of inner earth activity as well. One of the cities they were talking about so far was named Tomasis. And I'm only about halfway through the book, so I'll have other things to report. But as I'm reading this, and as I went back to redigest Diane Robbins' books and Aurelia Louise Jones' books, and I can't remember the author of the other Inner Earth book, and your book, by the way, Paula Davis, all of those just were reinforcements for me to go back to that. Look, these opinions were unsolicited by me, and there's too many commonalities between all of you that have written in those books. And what my experiences have been, there's too many commonalities to say that, wait a minute, all these people made up the same story out of nowhere with no communication with one another. I only say that to the people that are on the fence about believing that there's something greater than themselves. I, of course, you have resigned to that. And we're still in a process of learning what that means. We still exist in this density, but we all, those of us that are here for this, chose to come here for this purpose, that we knew that there was going to be a transition purpose and we were going to help along with it. So we're here to play it out. And the more the time goes on now, the more comfortable I get with the idea. I mean, there's no question in my mind that that it exists. And well, I'm a little bolder to say that, although it's not like I haven't said it before. It had been a while since I had had communications with the Lemurians. So when it happened finally in a hotel, Berlin hotel room, I guess the conditions and the timing just had to be right for that to start all over again. And it's not that last time I'm going to be fed information, and I'm not going to be the only one again. So that's why I'm happy to share that the rest of you that vibrate that way, it's just a matter of time before you're going to be reached out to. Now, you're a medium and you feel that already. I know that you're in touch with things beyond yourself as a rule. But I can tell you with great certainty now that there's going to be really focused attention. And it's not going to be, while everyone else is still pointing at the sky or talking about invasions of aliens that they've heard are coming, that's not where our focus is. And that's nothing at all for us to get alarmed about. In fact, it's worth celebrating. They waited for a long time for the conditions to be right and for this cosmic cycle to play itself out before they were going to reach out to surface people. They told me back in 2020 when I was there that this was one of the purposes that they were here for, that they wanted the surface people to know that they were here and that they were looking forward to the day that they would be reuniting. We all kind of looked in the future, knowing that that was a certainty. We just didn't know when. There's something inside of me that just keeps expanding, saying that day is any day now.
Yeah, I feel you're right about that. And I'm like you, I felt like I had strong contact starting at the end of June last year. Direct voice conversation. Oh, this, here we are, first of all, introduction, wasn't aware. then this is what's going on. This is what's happening. Could you write this book? And it wasn't until towards the middle of the end of the writing of the book that I started really getting into the Diane Robbins material. But it was, they'd already introduced themselves. And then after the book was coming towards the end, I had a lot of things going on and I couldn't hear that voice anymore strong. It like just faded. And I mean, I was having dreams at night about going to Talos and the specific things going on. I mean, it was just hyperactivity all the way around. I thought, my gosh, this has got to be happening fast, because this in the daytime, they're having me write this, and the nighttime I'm having these experiences. And then boom, it was just dead silence. And I thought, I've been abandoned. And then, but of course, connecting with you has kept me focused. And of course, the images that you're producing are helpful. But I do feel now again that it's amping up. And last summer, they said very specifically, it's going to start amping up 9 months from now, because I asked when, and they said 9 months from now. And so this is that 9-month time. So you're feeling that as well.
Oh, I'm not just feeling it, the contact's taking place.
The contact is taking place. I'm feeling it. And I just love the direction that you're taking with this, because I just was watching a TV show yesterday on Gaia. I can't remember the episode, but they were talking about how they use television shows and movies to help with the disclosure. And I thought, there's no question why I'm watching this right now, right? And that's one of the methods of disclosure, is using television and movies. Yeah, to help with
Well,
that.
they monitor everything on the surface, but I got a more insight in the last week. I got more insight about what daily life is like, and especially more about what it's like for children to be there. And so when children need to be occupied during the day, they have what we would call libraries, but the libraries are full of people that are have wisdom. It's not that there aren't materials there. I guess we would call them in book form, but their method of transmitting that information to children is to act it out. So this particular exercise that I find myself in, I'll share a little bit more because I want y'all to start getting excited. I'll have some more that maybe after the end of next week, when all 5 of us have been in the room together, there'll be a little bit better comfort level, because there's a degree where we're trying to keep a cap on what we're doing. We all know that Hollywood's famous for stealing really great ideas, and this isn't one of those things that we can afford to have released out there in the wrong way first. I don't know how that could ever happen, because I'm not on any other subject matter team, and so I get to be that influence here to help people understand the purpose without going into the story. I'll tell you exactly what the purpose of this is and what they saw it as. There is one character, one of the protagonists in this story, and it has to do with AI chipping, has an episode in which she has a vision and she realizes that she's from somewhere else, that her parents that are here on the surface aren't her real parents, and she feels some sensation of her mother reaching out from somewhere else. Well, it turns out she's from inner Earth. And so the first season, which is 8 episodes planned, the references to inner Earth are made all along the way. You can see the characters and how they interact and how they all relate or come to the surface. But by the end of the first season, the hanger is standing at an energetic vortex, getting ready to actually enter inner Earth. Yeah. Then there's 2 more seasons planned, so we got a lot of work to do in a short amount of time.
Yeah. Wow, that's so exciting. I'm so thrilled to hear it. And so how are you liking Berlin? How are you feeling about the energy there? I know that you're talking, you're in communication with the Lemurians again, and they're telling you that everything's amping up. And as you're in the city streets and seeing the people and eating the food, how's that feeling?
Oh, you froze up. I hope that's you, not me.
What is it? Oh,
We'll wait a moment. Try again. Now
there we
try
go.
again. Yeah. I don't know what dropped out, but it did. But anyway, could you repeat what you were saying?
Yeah, I was just saying, now I know that you've been successfully meditating and you've been in communication with the Lemurians and they're giving you updates of what's going on. And how is it in Berlin? How is it with the people and the food and the culture, the sort of like day in and day out?
It's, to me, it's I'm a real concentrated urban area. I'm on one of the busier Strasses, Kurfürstendamm. And with what I've explored the city, it's easy to get around. I've walked most of the places I've been. And it's funny because when I set out to meet them the first time, they live, maybe not quite 2.5 kilometers from where I'm staying. So it was a nice day enough. I walked. And because my phone allegedly works cellular service, that doesn't necessarily mean that I have internet connectivity. So I can't rely on Google Maps to get me where I'm going. And even if I tried to call an Uber, I'm limited with my connectivity. So it's just as easy to walk. And that's been lovely. Yesterday and today has been a little bit drizzly, but it looks like the rest of my stay, and I leave next Saturday, is supposed to be low 60s and a nicer day. So I'll get a chance to see more of Berlin. As for the food, the food's amazing. They got interesting, different kinds of street food. If you come here, you got to try the currywurst, which is amazing, and doner kebab. The portions are huge and doesn't cost very much, but the food's been delicious and fresh. But I sense, as I've been, walking around from time to time, I tend to, like to whistle and hum when I have my ear pods in and when I'm walking down the street. Nobody does that here. And although it's been said that it's not that they're standoffish, it's that the Germans are not the kind of empathic ones that, wait to meet your eye as you're walking by to give you a smile. That is not them. But at the same time, once you've won over a German friend, they are loyal friends forever. I get the sense that a bit after, I've been walking around the city and trying to catch people's opinion. I mean, I was a hotelier. And so, our rule, the 15-5 rule is, catch somebody's eye 15 feet away and smile when they're within 5. Yeah, that doesn't work here at all because people don't do that. And I almost get a sense that there's a little bit of apprehension to look somebody in the eye when they're here, because even if they do, it's just for a flash, and then they're back to their demeanor and continuing on. I haven't really seen anybody gregarious, not at all. But they are wonderfully and warm, and the vast majority speak at least a little bit of English. I speak a little bit of German, so I get along just fine here. In fact, I'm kind of surprised that my German served me as well as it does, and I remember enough of it, but, well, I am surprised I'm not. I know that there's divine intervention behind that, just trying to help me understand, negotiate where I am, and that's got to be some of the influence, but the people have been great. Those that you do have communications with are lovely. But even in the hotels I've stayed in, as I walk by the front desk, I'm just so used to American opinions where, it's their job to kind of smile and say hi. Yeah, that doesn't happen here.
Mhm. Okay. Yeah, because you definitely know the hospitality industry. And are the episodes going to be in English or German?
English.
English.
Yes, they'll be. You see a lot of American television here. A lot of it. It's all in American with German subtitles. So I'm sure that it's going to be produced in English, and then it'll be subtitled over that as well. And we'll see. There's other tribe and other resources that have yet to show up. But I know as certain as I had shoes on my feet, that help, and those tribe members are on their way.
Right. Very good.
So
Yeah,
I'll be returning.
so it's next
maybe-
Saturday?
That's when I return to LA, but I'll be coming back to Germany. Whether it's going to be, a lot of the filming that they've done have been in areas in Berlin. But one of them, and it's Gala, who is really the producer. And here's a woman whose gift is, she's been a healer and she's a therapist. And she's been that all her life. So she and her husband, she's fortunate that her spouse has a metaphysical side of himself that he recognizes too. She has two wonderful children. One of them is Oriana, and she's one of the actresses that's involved in this project. As she started her acting career, she has, and she does acting coaching now, and she's excellent at it. She has a method where it's not that she draws it out of the actors, but she gives them permission to explore their emotions as deeply as they can, where as she grew up and she went under the same circumstances, those acting coaches along the way had always kind of berated people, thinking that that was the only way to stimulate their emotions, was to berate them and to make them feel less than they were. And, once you broke yourself down according to that industry, that's when you could really reach into yourself. Well, she achieves those same results without having to berate anybody. When it's in an area where you're lovingly allowed to just express yourself, but we know that there's much inside of you. So dig as deep as you want and just let it flow. And when she's done that in a couple of her projects, and the people that she's worked with have just blossomed. I saw one of the others, Yulia Maria, I spent some time with. And the day before yesterday, when we were sitting kind of getting acquainted with one another, she was just, this other delightful little blossom that's just, waiting to shine somewhere else. When you find out what she's done in the past, along the way, she had mentioned a couple of times where she's had some anxiety, as she's been going through her acting career. And she was telling us about an instance where she was trying to get cast in a Christopher Nolan movie. Well, she said that a few times and never said what the movie was. So I went back to my room after that to look at Christopher Nolan movies. She was in Tenet. Oh my God. Yeah, these are professionals that have done professional work. And so again, I find myself, having these things placed in my path. It's mind-boggling to me how things line up like that.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
It's absolutely amazing. And I'm really excited. When do they think that they'll be able to do the edits and everything and possibly release it? Not sure.
Well, we're having those discussions. Once we're in a room together and we see where some of these other resources are coming through, as I was making preparations to come now, which was really short term, within 2 weeks of the time they reached out, I was here in Berlin. to just get this going, because as you know, we're not in a situation where, it's coming soon. There's no time. There's no
Mm-mm.
time. So
No.
whatever efforts we're going to put into it, we need to do it rapidly.
Yeah.
At first, when I floated the idea of we got to have something ready, even if it's just the pilot in 90 days, they're certainly scratching their heads, go, I don't know how we're going to do it in 90 days. I said, well, that's why I said it's just the pilot, because we can't really do all of this. We can't do this without planning out the entire season. So when I say the pilot will be done in 90 days, that was kind of a target that I put out there, but there's going to be a lot more work done than that. This has to get out quicker. If
Yeah.
I refer back to what I was instructed last summer, we have 2 years to get this work done. So as quickly as we can produce the first 8 episodes, and they have 3 seasons in mind already that tells the story. And the second 2 deal more with actually inside Inner Earth and all those machinations. We just need to get it, and we need to get it done. There are some other resources that need to show up. But just like I was explaining to Gayla, they will. Look, you reached out to me. I was here in 2 weeks. That same phenomenon is going to happen when we need to consider where finance is going to come from, when we consider what production companies we need to outsource some of this stuff to, because, 4 people are not going to get this done. We know that there's more to it than that. And then there's locations that need to be considered, but all of that has to be done rapidly. It's not that I haven't seen things get done quickly, because between you and I, we can see how quickly a book gets kicked out. When really in our minds, we had really no intention today to write a book, but when things line up and we're motivated to do it, there's just something that takes over. And even they've said that, when we listen to you, it's like you just kick into another year. Yeah, well, I don't even know what I'm saying most of the time. It just flows. Once some information finds its way in a way that I can articulate it, it comes out, and it sounds profound as hell. That's just when you can tell I've stepped out of the way and just allowed it to flow out of me.
Right. And you're right. I think we need a quantum leap in terms of knowledge that this even exists, but even to receive it, because you and I know, I hear it and it makes sense on a conscious level, but then there's this level where I have to really accept it, and it sort of hits you. I know for me, the deeper resonating has even presented itself over the last couple of weeks, where it's like, no, this absolutely makes sense. It can't be any other way. This is the logical next step. And the only reason it wouldn't seem logical to someone is because of misinformation, lack of, openness, never guided into that. But when you look at it, it's a logical next step. It's logical if you look at it, but it does take a certain level of development of consciousness to really accept that. And I would say that that there is some challenge there. There is the hearing it like on a TV show, but the lack of consciousness to accept it, number one, and number two, to even raise your vibration enough where you would be received into inner as an invitation, as a non-contaminated individual, coming in, I have a challenge, I immediately go dark and go, you know what I mean?
It's our conditioning, Paula, isn't it? That's our frame of reference. And we know the biggest challenge we're going to have is to get people to just stretch beyond their boundaries. The more I think about how this opportunity has presented itself, I can see that the universe in its brilliance has decided the best way to communicate this to the current population on the globe. What is the common factor? What's the common language between any of us on the planet? It's film. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter what the language is, it's film. So when the idea of taking this, what will seem like a fantasy story, only for you to understand that when we get to the end of season 1, this isn't fantasy. We're about to show you the inner earth that you already resonate and you sense that's already here. That's the role I get to play, is to help you actually begin to experience it before you get to experience it.
Yeah, exactly. And just kind of giving just a little taste of something that I'm up to now. So I am right now working at a company, and it's a family company, but I came in a week ago and I found out this week that they're implementing AI into their integrated work systems. And I thought, okay, this is interesting, and I'm going to help with the implementation of this. But what I realized is they're using AI to give higher consciousness, higher vibrational responses to clients. So if a client comes in and has a question about something, and you're trying to influence them into your product or service, then the AI prompts the employee to give a certain response that's positive to the client. But as I'm working with it, I realize the responses that they're giving to the client, the prompts, are higher minded, higher vibrational responses to the client. And I think to myself, isn't this a clever way to start engaging at a higher level and even integrating an employee into a higher level of consciousness? Because they're prompting them, and the person, of course, as they're giving information from a higher vibration, higher mind, then they're learning it at the same time while they're at their job making money.
See, here's where I can
That's quite a,
see
I mean,
the
that's what I
benefit of
think.
AI. That
Yeah.
if AI was to suit all these wonderful intentions that we had, here's one example of that. When you
Yeah.
pointed out that it tends to, force isn't the right word, to realize and begin to see things from a higher perspective, which is what I do now.
Right.
Duality, I see it, but I don't play in it anymore because I recognize it for what it is. And if AI has the ability to help us coax us in that direction, then it's beneficial for us. But you got to remember that AI it's not an education engine. Us,
No.
us sentient beings are that. We
We are
learn
that.
and evolve through our experiences, and we can influence AI, but AI can only be influenced as to the influence it's been given to. It's
Yeah.
rote. It's like learning a piano that way, as opposed to we think it's just going to take off, and like 2001, it's going to have a sentience of its own, and we lose control. That's not it. It's going to be a wonderful tool for us in the next realm. The
Yeah.
question was always going to be, how's it going to work in this realm when we know that things are always manipulated along the way, and to what degree will it be manipulated so that it's not a positive force for all of us? I just keep seeing the timeline accelerating so quickly
Yeah.
that any plans of any dark influences to be able to shift, and you just keep seeing the next thing just kind of fall apart as we go along. And when you see these weather phenomena the way that they are, people have got to stop thinking that 25 inches of rain in Fort Lauderdale in a 2-day period is something that can be explained away. There are changes that are taking place on the earth, and here is evidence of them. They have destructive forces, and we were told they would. But that doesn't mean that we're going to die and be wiped off the map. We are prepared, and being prepared to step into the next level of consciousness that Earth is about to occupy. because those of us that came here to express ourselves in New Earth, that day is coming sooner than we think. And all of this is just preparation for that, so that people are ready and that they're not going to freak out when they get there. That's going to happen enough. There are enough people that are walking around that are unenlightened, unaware, and are just conditioned by the things that they've been conditioned by before. That was what they chose. As I understand it, they're not just going to automatically fade away at the period at which this shift takes place. There's even a period of time at the end of all of this, when people are moving into these golden tie allotments and just getting themselves ready until the entire planet vibrates that way, there is still a choice for every sovereign being that's here. And I've been encouraged by just seeing that more and more of the population is going to choose ascension when then that opportunity comes along, as opposed to what I believed when this began with me. And, the idea is that only 40% of us were ready to ascend, and, the rest of it would atrophy away. And I no longer think that way. I think that there's enough influence going on, and I've seen tribes show up. And it's not like that was the end of it. The people that started coming my way last year, that line has not stopped. I keep hearing from other people. In fact, somebody reached out yesterday because they live here in Berlin. And she asked me if I was going to have any time that I could meet with people while I was here, because they would love to do that. Well, I didn't have any plan to do that. Perhaps when I get back, we can arrange for some of that, because I would absolutely enjoy to do that, but I wasn't prepared for that. And this came up so quickly. I know it's important for me to share. And when I can, one-on-one like that, I love to do that and let people ask whatever questions. It just didn't occur to me that I was going to jet set around and tell people about inner Earth and the things to expect.
Well, I think it's time. It's time. It's time to do that. Yeah.
I remember the advice I got from my guides last on, this is no time to play it small anymore. You need to speak up and tell people. And the last time Yaya and I were having conversations, we were kind of replaying, the sequence of what was going to take place and how that was all going to shape out. We knew that vibrations were changing, and that sooner or later, when we told the story, we were concerned about what we were going to tell. When I shared a lot of the documentation and you got to read the information in the golden tie allotments, there's stuff in there that the first person that would read that for the first time with an unenlightened approach, there's information in there would freak me out. And so, there was even the language that they put in there was so delicate, and that it wasn't a warning, but it was just a reminder that vibration in the collective could cause distortions, which they wanted to avoid right now, because we need all our focus on higher vibrations and not to let fear grip you and drag you back to where you were, even to areas where, new content has no way of getting through anymore. You're just so stuck in what I knew, and no, none of that's going to happen. I just should be afraid of what's going to happen on the earth and what's going to happen with me when that happens. I've just seen more people that have come along, just like when we all connected and, it all came to us, and now we found tribes. So we feel good about talking about these things, and that more tribe is showing up. Just demonstrates to me that there's more going on in the background that I didn't have to touch and you didn't have to touch. And somehow, divinely, their higher aspects are knocking on their own hearts, and they're responding accordingly because it's time to do so.
And so you talk about the weather, that's key. But then also, what do you think of the world events that the humans are being able to affect right now?
Same instance. You know, I just monitor the political atmosphere, and over here we're ridiculous. What goes on, especially within the Republican Party, people around the world can't understand what is going on, what the meltdown is. When you explain that the duality there in the United States is everything is being exposed. The veil is being pulled back in every places, and people that have had influence in the past are being held accountable. People who never thought that they would, succumb to the law, oh, their days are coming. We had always been told they would be, that justice would prevail, but we didn't see much evidence of it with people that had influence and power. Well, all that's changing. Now you see there's a Supreme Court justice who, has had some shenanigans in the background, and that's playing out. All of it is about to be revealed. So when we see these things happen, it shouldn't be, oh my God, see what happened next. It should be, oh, well, we were told these things would be unfolded, and that kind of behavior is about to be corrected so that Earth can move into the place where love and unity and compassion is the rule of the day, not what we're in today. As I've been exposed again to inner Earth and what's there, I predominantly think about Telos, or it's more appropriate to say I had been. I really hadn't been open to, other than what I had experienced, that there's 120 cities in inner Earth.
Mm-hmm.
And there are other beings other than the Lemurians that left there, former Atlanteans that were there, that occupy that space as well. And some of them are forms that we're not used to seeing. We got to get used to the fact that there are going to be differences that we should never be afraid of. They're all benevolent beings that have a place to play and a role to play in the tapestry of the universe. And they've all been here longer than we have. It's not, again, aliens that are going to be coming, in UFO craft, or that they're just lurking in the ionosphere in a mothership that, is shrouded, and one day we're going to be invaded. That is not what's about to take place, but that's the narrative that people understand because that's what they've been shown on TV and movies and read in books all along the way, because the duality of shaking us up is what we liked. And the more we got shook up, the more we liked it. I can see why horror movies got more popular, especially with younger people that are just looking for the next sensation, but it doesn't vibrate with me at all. The idea that we would harm another individual is beyond me. And that's why I stopped listening to politics in spite of all this gun violence that we still suffer. And instead of thinking of a solution to protect the humans that are around me, there's that faction that still wants to cling on the ideas that they should own guns in case they have to take somebody out. Nobody should be taken out. Life seems to be cheap to a lot of people, and they just don't understand how sacred it is. So for those people, I understand you are connected to me, and I send light and love with you wherever you go. My attention is limited to your vibration, and if it doesn't match mine, I love you and send you on your way, but I don't have time for that. I'm not interested in dropping my vibration anymore because there's too much good that's coming. We're still mired in a lot of it. And although the foreign influences, of dark extraterrestrial energy is gone from the surface. As I've said before, though, there's residue that's been left behind. Some of it in the forms of those people are still here. Some of it in forms of thought patterns that they put in our heads that we haven't been able to sort out and dismiss yet. But that's just, look, every time we get to a point where there's some type of huge change, chaos ensues first. I don't need to point out to anybody that listens to this that we're in the middle of chaos of all kinds of times. Some of it we've created ourselves, some of it's the product of the division that's been created, and some of it is just natural phenomenon that we're going to live through, like these torrential rains we've been getting. The Russian volcano that spewed, 3 days ago out of nowhere? More earthquake activity along the California coast. There was a 6.4 just off the coast in Northern California. Apparently it was deeper than we had to worry about, but this phenomenon is increasing, not stopping. And when people want to look at, well, how do we stop that? Well, we don't. The earth is going through these vibrations as she's assimilating into her new form. And these are just results of the energy that's coming at us that is really the energy behind the change, not just for Earth, all sentient matter.
I think that's phenomenal. And to your point, there isn't just the Telosians, the Lemurians, there's the Atlanteans, but also in people that seem to be more directly connected to giving us information based on, the bird diary, right? Admiral Byrd's diary. So when he flew over the North Pole, he encountered, and this is just kind of interesting that you're in Berlin with the Germanic people, because he had encountered the Ariani people. We talk about the Aryans, but, could there be confusion, right? That there's these Ariani people and they have a Germanic sounding accent, language, and they look Scandinavian, right? They look Germanic or, Northern European. Mm-hmm. And they're the ones who had an encounter with Admiral Byrd in Middle Earth and gave him the information. Hey, as soon as you detonated that atomic bomb, we became very aware, number one, that you're down a wrong path. And number two, the long-term effects of that are going to present themselves in the future, right? There's the impregnation, but then there's the birth of what you really did many years later, the negative effects. And they're Germanic. And one thing that in my book and doing the research, because I'm researching, I love research and history, is that the German language can be traced back all the way back to our cradle of history, Mesopotamia. And the 80%, the genetics of the people of Mesopotamia, you find in Germany, 80% like match of the German. So the language from then, Mesopotamia, not evolved, not evolving, probably does sound very German. It's still the rudimentary language because the German people, Scandinavian people are kind of isolated, right? And if you isolate a language, it doesn't evolve and develop. And if these people were of that origin people from back then they would go into Middle Earth sounding Germanic. They would be of that root race. And so I find that that's interesting, that their influences on us as well, aren't they?
Oh, absolutely. One of the things that became more clear that I had in this exchange when they showed up, and I've touched on this before because I've had people that have reached out to me and we're going to do some type of a program. And in a couple instances, it was about people that went missing on Mount Shasta. And that's what they wanted to understand. Well, I have clarity on it. I guessed what had happened to them, and I was right. There were many people that once they found that place, didn't come back. They could vibrate at a place where that they could get to inner Earth and they could find a way to stay. And that's exactly what they did. You'll see them again. And when you see them, I have an understanding now of the forms that we take as well. That once you reach in that light form that you've got in that realm, you choose a version of yourself between what we would think of what we would look like between our 20s and 30s. And that is your avatar for as long as you decide you want to stay on the planet. Whether you want to be hundreds of years old, whether you want to be thousands or 10,000s of years old, here is the form that you can take. Now, you are a crystalline light form with the ability to manifest what you wish. You're not locked into that form. You can change that along the way if that's your choice. But these are all concepts that are sci-fi to us. I'm telling you, they're not sci-fi. This is what our abilities are going to be. And this is where a lot of these people have gone. We're going to see them again when we get to go to that realm and run into people that vibrate at the same level, that look familiar to us, but have been elsewhere and off the planet. You know, they had a life here that they left and somehow found their way to whatever valley in inner Earth they went. Many of them went to Telos because lots of people are drawn to Shasta. And then here's the entryway to Telos. I say Telos there. I was also reminded that we think of Telos and Lemuria as being under Mount Shasta. Well, let me tell you, there was Lemurian and Telosian influence all the way down Western United States, including the area that's in Sedona. So it shouldn't be any surprise when we talk about energetic areas. It was influenced by the same thing in Shasta. Now, the vibrations are different on the grids for sure, and that's why Sedona to me always seems like I characterize it the same way where I grew up in Minnesota, where I lived in the Twin Cities. St. Paul's old conservative kind of money, and that's what the government was for the state. Minneapolis, young, hip, contemporary. That's how I kind of equate Shasta as the granddaddy kind of conservative, you know, maternal energy. And Sedona is just, it's much more lively. And there's just an elevation to the energy there. But make no mistake, the two areas are connected.
It's so interesting that you say that because you triggered a dream that I had while I was writing the book. Okay, so it's funny that you say that because I had a dream. Okay, so I've been receiving information that just like all these other 120 civilizations they have their unique culture, right? They all have their unique culture, but they have a consensus of love, high vibration, but they have their unique style and culture and food and way of living that's probably influenced from when they were on the surface or if they came from another planet, whatever. It's unique. So I was guided in when I was in direct communication, we would play games, me and the Lemurians. And it was like, let me see how much you can stay connected to our information. So they'd say, I'd write my book in the day. I'd start at 5:30 in the morning, very early, write for very dogged writing for a period of time. And then I would take a break and they'd say, get in the car and let's see if you can be guided to turning and being guided to where we want to take you to go. And one of the places that they took me was a cave system in not far from where I live. And I got out of, and they say, okay, get out of the car and walk to this place. And I walked to this place that's a cave that's been documented by somebody, I guess, 20 years ago. And it's interesting because the cave says this cave was excavated on my birthday in 1989. And 1989 was when I first visited Austin, Texas. That's when I first came here, was actually around my birthday. So I said, oh, this cannot be a coincidence. They told me where to go, like left, right, left, right, left, right. And it's an area I've been to many, driven around, but never knew that there was a cave system back there, right? Like I just didn't know. And so that was interesting. But I also and then also was guided to a place and a neighborhood, very nice little neighborhood. And it said, well, we find that people on surface Earth kind of like this sort of environment. So we've copied this in inner Earth. We've copied it for you. And this would be, an area where people would come and raise their children. And it was very young families in this particular neighborhood, which would make sense because we're all young, right? And so I said, oh, wow, well, this is beautiful and delightful and full of nature. And then one evening I had a dream, and it said, okay, this is going to be the view that you're going to have from a place of work that you're going to have. And it was in inner Earth, but the visual outside was the red rocks of like Sedona. So that was like, so it was like one of those things where I knew it was masqueraded from the outside. You couldn't see in, but I could see out, but it was still from inner Earth, and I could see out, and it was the red rocks of Sedona, which I love. I love the desert.
Mhm.
I find it to be very beautiful. So the fact that you talk about Sedona, and then me having that dream that I can recall very clearly saying, you'll be working from this area, makes me think that they've built a civilization that's similar to what we would feel comfortable with, and with our own people, and help to integrate us, right? We're going to need integration. It's, no matter how evolved you are, I know for myself, I will need time and integration, and probably a little bit of sequestering with my own people for a bit. And then from there, I'm sure we can be more out there. But it's interesting that you say that, because that's in exact harmony with the dreams that I was having, was being able to see out, but nobody could see in, and I could see red rocks of Arizona and Sedona, and it being very beautiful. So that's wonderful. That's wonderful to hear. It's very exciting.
It's soon. I've expressed before that there are more and more energetic areas that are opening up across land that didn't appear to have any type of elevation in vibration before. But we were told that that was about to happen. And we were given some indications as where those areas might be, but even those weren't going to be limited. Sooner or later, all of Earth's surface is going to be elevated. And at that time, then it'll match the vibration that the beings and the elements within inner Earth already have known. They've been like that for a while. If we remember any of our galactic history, when Earth was first formed, she was a seventh dimensional being. And inner Earth holds that frequency today. That space holds there. Are there seventh dimensional beings there now? Of course there are. And sixth and fifth, which is where those humans fit in, and where our evolution is pointing us to go next. So if we think that we are going to be the first humans that ever got to fifth dimensional awareness on the planet, well, that's not entirely true. We've been there and we're living it inside. So here is the model of what we're about to experience, surface and underneath the surface, when the day comes that the vibration matches throughout the world. These people already live that. They understand there's no negativity in their realm at all. And if I don't even know how to explain, if there was, they certainly live that way and that rule, so that that vibration doesn't exist, but they already know where we're going. They're going to be well suited to it. But that's the reason that they withdrew the way that they did, is so that the negativity that's all over the surface wasn't going to influence that. And they did a wonderful job at protecting what they had and used the technology and the power that they had as beings to accomplish that end. It wasn't that hard because in the density that we are, man, we can be dark. And that density is heavy. It's a lot to carry around. Light doesn't penetrate that very well, or it takes a long time to get through. And that just prevents us from realizing the things that are meant for us. Every effort is being taken to help elevate our vibration and our frequencies, because that's what's about to take place. All the books I've read continue to talk about our frequency and our vibration and what it needs to be in order for us to experience where we're going next. Again, even when they said, and I heard that material 2 years ago, and as a novice back then, I don't know what the hell that meant. Oh, raise your vibration. If you can explain that, maybe I can figure out in my little Capricorn brain how I can 1, 2, 3, 4 that thing. I didn't know. That's not how it came to me. But the bottom line is it came. And it's coming for everybody else as well. I'm delighted when I hear from somebody new that just kind of snapped in. It just is more indication that all of this is unfolding the way that they said it was going to unfold. But the first year after it happened, and I had kind of a handle on what had happened, and I understood this is where we were going, and the timeline is short and been accelerated. Yeah, that's not the message I've gotten since last September. There is no time. The time for people to change and realize what's going on is now, because tomorrow could be the day that flare snaps off the sun and decides to come at Earth finally. It was a matter of time. Look at the solar influences on the cycle. We are ahead of when we thought solar maximum, according to somebody, and I resonate with this, it was supposed to be like 2025. The patterns that we're experiencing now are beyond that pace already, and we're not to solar maximum yet. It's just a matter of time before that proton energy does exactly what it's supposed to do. And it won't be just expand people, because we just think of what's happening to here on Earth. It's happening to our entire solar system. And if we think that we're really the only life form that's inhabited inside one of the planets, every one of the planets in my solar system, and Greg, get ready for me to blow your mind, has an inner cavity in each one of the planets as well that sustains life just like we do. When you really look at the composite of every one of these orbs that are in our solar system, they're really not that different inside and outside. We think that they're different because that's all science in its little fenced in understanding of what they think they understand.